Brighton, Britain, birthplace of William Shakespeare, Mahatma Gandhi and Big Bird. But what of the ordinary people of Britain? What about them and all their stuff?
Ladies and gents, welcome to the home of the Welsh Premier League champions, the venue at Park Hall, which happens to be right here in England. Ladies and gents, something different today on Rise Football Paradise. It very much is a paradise. It is absolutely boiling, beautiful, hot and sunny weather here in England. Oh yes, I'm here at the home of the Welsh Premier League champions, the New Saints, but they play here in England at the venue, the Park Hall Stadium. Now you've read the title, there's a lot going on with the history of this club. You might have come across TNS, as I did in the mid-2000s, when they came up against Liverpool as part of each club's Champions League qualifying campaign. I'm going to get on to more about that game in a moment, but if we just refer to my notes, because I've had to make notes, no smoke and mirrors here on Rise Football Paradise. This ground, according to Wikipedia, has a capacity of 3,000, but I spoke with the kind people behind the scenes and they said they'd very rarely get 3,000 in here. It's more like a few hundred for league games. Now they obviously play in the Welsh Premier, the Cymru Premier to give it its exact name, but the season has finished early. It does finish a little bit earlier than the English Football League. To give the club its full name, they are the New Saints of Oswestry Town and Llansanfraid Football Club. Hopefully my pronunciation's been okay. I spent half my time on Rise Football Paradise apologising about pronunciations. They're probably going to be worse than the German pronunciations I've done recently. But yes, it's a joint Welsh and English football team. Now, those two teams, Oswestry Town and Llansanfraid Football Club, were two different teams, but in 2003 they merged. Again, I'm going to get on to more of the history as we visit where they used to play in Wales, but they are by far the most successful club in the Welsh leagues. They've won the league title 16 times. They're the current champions. They absolutely blitzed the league this season on 92 points. I think second place was like 40 odd points below. But if you can just look at this glorious setting amongst this glorious weather, that grass in the background is actually the old artificial grass, because you can probably see on camera this is a perfect looking pitch because it is a plastic pitch. Those of you who watched football in the 80s, you'll know Loftus Road and Kenilworth Road were kind of ahead of their time, or maybe that's not the right way of saying it. They were the first to kind of experiment with plastic pitches. But this is a glorious looking pitch. The old pitch is over there in the distance. We've got a few goals on the pitch because obviously the New Saints train here as well as play here. So when I say they're the most successful club in the Welsh leagues, not only from their 16 league titles, but since the 2001-2002 season, TNS have finished either first as winners or second as runners-up every time since that date, bar one season when they finished third in the 08-09 season. So I did ask the guy over there, I said, was there ever any plan to join the English Football League to do a bit of a Wrexham or whatever? But their goal is very much European football orientated. Obviously from winning the Welsh Premier League, the Welsh Cup and stuff, you get into the qualifying rounds of the Champions League or other European competitions. So their aim is to very much improve the club through European football. And if they can get through the first qualifying round, I think even if they do lose the second qualifying round, they've still got chances of European competition like the Europa Conference League, for example. So there's a lot more benefit to this club staying in the Welsh leagues than to go into like the National League or lower and work their way into the English Football League. So representation of 50% English, 50% Welsh is done through the club crest, the current badge. You've got Llansanfraid, the Welsh side of the club, and obviously here in Oswestry, so you've got the Welsh Dragon, an English Lion, the New Saints. But they weren't obviously originally called the New Saints, they were two separate teams. But after the merger, TNS did stand for something else, something a little bit more controversial, which I'll get onto again in a moment. But despite Wikipedia saying the founding date was 1959, if we do go along the Welsh side of their history, they spent most of their existence in regional and lower Welsh leagues until they got what is now currently the Welsh Premier League in 1993. In 1996, it was a huge year for the club. They won the Welsh Cup. They qualified off the back of that for the European or UEFA Cup Winners' Cup, a competition rich in history but no longer around. But the biggest thing that happened in 1996, as I just mentioned, was the name change to TNS. Now, local computer company, electricals company, Total Network Solutions, had a sponsorship deal with the club which saw them actually sponsor the name of the club. So originally they were Total Network Solutions Llansanfraid, but then eventually they would drop the Llansanfraid from the name, and they were merely known as Total Network Solutions, but obviously they couldn't always use that sponsorship name, so they had to be called TNS. From 1959, they actually played their football at the recreation ground, where I am right here in Llansanfraid. Now, even though they played here from 1959 to around the mid-2000s, by this point TNS were regularly playing European football. Now, UEFA deemed this place unsuitable for a UEFA standard of football, for European football, so TNS had no choice but to regularly play at different grounds, often at Wrexham's racecourse ground. And even in 2003, they actually played at the Millennium Stadium when they played Manchester City. It was a two-legged affair. City had recently just moved into what is now the Etihad. So they've moved around a lot over the years, TNS. But let's just take a little look at the recreation ground. First impressions, I can see why UEFA had a slight issue with this place. Whew. What a beautiful day. Now, 2003, not only did they play Manchester City, it was a big year for the club. It was an important year for the club's history. Obviously, they're now currently a 50-50 club, a half English, half Welsh club. That happened off the back of Oswestry Town in 2003 approaching the club and suggesting a merger. Now, obviously, that came with complications. You've got an English club and a Welsh club coming together. But Oswestry Town were, despite the fact that they are an English club or were an English club, they were playing in the Welsh Football League. So it wasn't such an extravagant idea. So then, guys, despite some initial reluctance from UEFA, both domestic and European governing bodies did agree with the merger. So TNS were like when Hulk Hogan joined forces with the Macho Man Randy Savage. TNS become the mega power of Welsh football, and they haven't looked back since. The original plan was to host some of their home games here in Wales at the recreation ground and some of them in England. Obviously, we know from the start of the video, they've settled in England at the venue, at the Park Hall Stadium. But originally, it was a little bit rough around the edges, a little bit like this, I suppose. It's a glorious day though, guys. We're on the pitch. Did they make the right move? Probably so. Let's head back to the homeland and where they're currently playing. Let's go. So, back in England. Now, as I said earlier on in the video, I first came across TNS in 2005-ish, in the 2005-2006 season, when they played Liverpool. Now, seems a little bit weird because obviously if you win the Champions League, you now automatically qualify for the following season. But back then, Liverpool were newly crowned Champions League winners. They'd won the European Cup, but they were initially denied a spot in the next season's Champions League competition. Unthinkable, but being the good Samaritans that they are, TNS came to the rescue and offered to put their spot in the Champions League, their qualifying spot, on the line in a one-off match versus Liverpool. things kind of evolved and UEFA kind of come round to the idea of Liverpool being in the competition. So they officially did a bit of a draw, and randomly Liverpool and TNS got drawn together. Now they played the first leg at Anfield. Stevie G, Slippy G, Gerrard scored a hat-trick as Liverpool won 3-0. But in the return leg, not here, but in nearby Wrexham, the racecourse ground, they would lose 3-0 again. So it wasn't incredibly, there was no underdog victory for TNS, but just merely the fact of playing Liverpool in the Champions League is definitely a significant moment in this club's history. It was around this time, maybe just afterwards, that Total Network Solutions, the sponsor of the club, were bought out by BT. Therefore, the sponsorship agreement came to an end. So, TNS were looking for a new name, but obviously they'd established themselves with those initials of TNS. So they wanted to keep them in the name. Now, the club even put the naming rights on eBay in a search for a new name. Obviously that didn't happen, and they settled on the New Saints. The New Saints is a great name because it represents both half of the clubs. You've got Oswestry Town, who have got close links to St Oswald. So obviously the Saint factor ties in there. But also Lansantfraid, their nickname was the Saints. So perfect. So the New Saints is a perfect name for this club. Now, when we've done recent videos in Germany, we spoke about sponsors and how German fans have a dislike a little bit for Leverkusen because of their connections with Bayer. Obviously, they're owned by the big pharmaceutical company that kind of basically built Leverkusen up. Also for clubs like Wolfsburg and their connections to VW, and most importantly, the most hated of them all being RB Leipzig. Now, even though the RB doesn't officially stand for Red Bull, we all know secretly it does. So sponsored names for teams are very unpopular, I think, around the world. But I think the TNS aspect of this club is a lot different than some of those I've just mentioned. The current TNS incarnation of the New Saints really summarises the journey this club have been on as a dual club, as a combined club, Welsh and English, 50-50 club. It really is a remarkable story. It's a remarkable club, and it's something that's just not very common at all. Ladies and gents, what do you think of this venue? Get your opinions, get your thoughts in the comments below. It's been an absolute pleasure coming here. And just as I looked at my notes slightly off camera, just as a point of reference, obviously Oswestry Town played here from 93 to 2003, but the place didn't kind of look like it does now. It was a little bit in a bit of a bad state, let's be honest. So from that period of like 2003 to 2007, things started to change here. Again, Wikipedia has TNS playing here from 07 to today, but upon that time of the merger, there was obviously a point in time whereby they kind of played at each ground. Now, TNS have absolutely smashed the Premier League this year. As I said earlier on, 92 points. And I fully understand why they want to stay in the Welsh Premier League as opposed to exploring options elsewhere. They've got a great thing going. They've got European football pretty much on a yearly basis. And it adds to the interesting, quirky story of the New Saints. So I hope you've enjoyed the video, guys. Make sure you do stick the thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, and we're going to have a Schalke stadium tour coming up next on the channel, I think. Check out the Dortmund one and all the German videos, and we are going to be this weekend at the League 2 playoff final on Sunday. So there you go. Check out these videos on screen right now, and I'll see you in one of those videos.